So we will be making this application. So I'm showing you the demo for the project. So if we click on some points, you can see it says Gallery Cafe, British Columbia, Canada. So confirmed cases, deaths, latitude, longitude. So it's reverse geocoding the latitude and longitude and giving us the place name. So we will be adding the feature for reverse geocoding. If I zoom out this, you can see we are getting clusters. And if we zoom on these clusters, so these represent there are 4 locations within this cluster that are prone to corona. So if we zoom out, and now you can see the points getting distinctly separated, so we can easily zoom out on the cluster. And then if we click on each point, we are getting Australia, Australian Capital Territory, and confirmed cases, deaths, longitude, latitude. So the data for the recovered cases that we're getting from the API is not correct. So that is why we are not rendering that to our application. So this is the entire application that we will be making in this video. So let us start. So now let us start with the implementation of our coronavirus tracker application, for which I've already prepared a boilerplate. So you can find the link for the course files down below this video. We will be using Mapbox GL for the rendering the map, and this is the markup that I've already prepared for you, and some styles for rendering the markup and for decorating it. So if you see in the browser, you are getting something like this. And here we will first render the map right below the coronavirus tracker heading. And right above the map, we will have the details pertaining to the world that will tell about the number of deaths, the number of confirmed cases pertaining to the world. And here is given a drop down, a select list, where we will be rendering the name of the countries. And once you select the name of a country, you will be able to see the details pertaining to that country for corona. So let us start with the implementation. So as you can see in the markup, we have already prepared this, and here we have the hook for rendering the world details. So we will select that, and here we will render the map. Then we have a select drop down where we will be selecting a country, and whatever country gets selected, we will render the corona details for that country inside this div. Okay, so we already have the scripts for the Mapbox, which we will be using for reverse geocoding, that is for converting the latitude longitude to a valid place name. We will be using Mapbox GL geocoder when rendering the point on the map. So if you click on the point, you will be able to see the details of corona and the name of the place, okay, along with latitude and longitude. I will be using end progress for loading bars. So the very first thing we will do is we will say window.add event listener DOM content loaded, and I will say initialize app, and then I will define a function initialize app. And here what I will do is I will say do event bindings. So we will be doing some event bindings. So whatever events we will be hooking up with our DOM elements, or we will contain them within this event bindings function. And let us log here initialize the app. So you can see we are getting initialized app. And let us see the API that we will be using to get the data for our application. So right here I'm on the link here, coronavirus-tracker-api.herokuapp.com/v2/locations. So the link for the API can also be found down below this video. And as you can see here, we are getting a JSON. So in the JSON you can see we are getting the latest, that confirmed and deaths. And for now the recovered is not getting updated, so we will be not using that. Okay, so we will be using the confirmed cases and death cases, and we will be getting an array of locations. So we will get the country names and we will render them on the map. Okay, and whatever latitude longitude you get, we will reverse geocode that and convert that to a place name. Okay, so we will get multiple regions pertaining to a country, and for that we can use reverse geocoding, which will give us the exact place name pertaining to a country. Let us grab the API link and go back to our implementation. The base URL endpoint. So I'll say const base URL endpoint, and I'll paste the link here. Okay, so this is the link that we will be using for getting the data. Now, container for displaying the Karuna details. So for a particular country, of course, so Karuna details container, and then let us also select the drop down. For selecting the drop down, we will need a country select drop down, which is the select list, which is this one right here, select, and it has a name of select hyphen country. Okay, so we will be grabbing this select drop down for country selection. So let country select drop down. So now let us define a variable for rendering the world Karuna details. So container for rendering the world Karuna details. So I will say let Karuna world details container, and we will need an object here. So const Karuna data, and whatever latest data that we will get back from the API, so which is this one, confirmed and deaths, will not be taken recovered as I earlier told you, because it is not getting updated by the API. And define latest here, so that will be an object for getting the world details. And to get the locations, we will be using an array, so locations. And let us paste the country codes here, so which is this is a big object, as you can see here. This is the countries with country codes object, and pertaining to each country code we have the country name, so the country name corresponding to the country code JP, and like this. Now let us set up the references now, and right below the log I will say set references, and let us define a function named that as set references, and we will set up all the references here. So first one was Karuna details container that we earlier made a variable for. So Karuna details container document.querySelector and hash Karuna details. Next one is the country select dropdown. So I will say country select dropdown document.querySelector, and let us see how we can select that. Here you can see that we're having a name attribute sitting on the select tag. So we will select using this. So let me copy this and go back to my app.js file, and here in single quotes, then square braces, and let us paste this here. And now we have to select the Karuna world details container document.querySelector, and that is hash Karuna hyphen world hyphen details. So let me copy this and let us paste here right after the hash. So let us write the code for the event bindings. I will say function do event bindings, and here all the event bindings pertaining to our DOM elements will go. So I will say country select dropdown dot add event listener, and once a change event occurs, so once someone selects a country from our drop down list, so a change event, okay, so the active element gets changed, or the active option that will appear in the select drop down gets changed. So we'll listen for the change event. This event will get triggered, and once it gets triggered, we'll run the function render details for selected location. So for now we will leave the implementation. We will implement this method a bit later. And now let us populate the locations in our select drop down list using the object that we had earlier defined, which is this one. Right in my initialize app method, I can define a function and name it as populate locations, and I will invoke the function here. And for populating locations, I will say function populate locations, and here I will use a method defined on the object class object.entries. I've already discussed about object.entries in great detail, so the link for that video can be found down below. So using object.entries, you will get an array of pairs. So each pair will constitute a key and value, and the key and value will be something like this. So we will get an array of array, and here the country code will be there and the country name will be there, like this, something like this, okay, and so on. So for each country or for each such key value pair that you're getting, we'll get something like this. Now as you will be getting an array, so we can loop over that. So object.entries for countries with country codes dot for each entry that you will be getting, and you can basically destructure that entry by saying, so for each entry I want to grab the country code and the country. I will call a function for each location. So this will help us to create an option in our select drop down list. Whatever entries that you're having, you are basically iterating over them, okay, and for each entry you will populate a location, which means that you will be creating an option for your select drop down list, and then we will populate the entire drop down list. So populate location, pass on the country and pass on the country code. So let us define the function for populate location. So function populate, and here we will get the country and the country code. And for creating an option, what I can do is I can say const country option, and I can use document dot create element, which we had already seen in the video on creating elements in the DOM lessons. So I will create an option tag, and then I will give a value to that. So country option dot value, and I will pass on the country name here, then country option. So let us see what we get by logging this to the console first, okay. So if I go back to my application, it says render details for selected location is not defined, okay. So let us define a function for this as well, but this will do nothing for now. For selected location console log, hey, let's make a reload, and you can see we are getting the options from the select list that we were from the data that we were having. So from the data that we had made in an object, we have prepared these options, and now we will populate these options in our select dropdown, which is right here, okay. And I can say country option dot text content, and I will render that here. So country hyphen code, not hyphen, it's country underscore code, and then country. So first the country code hyphen, then the name of the country, okay. And let us see what our option now looks like before appending that to our drop down list. So country option, and let us see the output. So as you can see, we are getting the options correctly made. So we used the DOM's document.create element, we created the option, we attached a value attribute to it, we added the text content, and now our options are ready. So let us go back to our code, and now let us populate our drop down list. So country select dropdown dot append child, and pass on the country option, and let us see the output now. So now you can see the complete drop down is now ready. We are getting the list of countries getting rendered here. So now let us make the async call to get the data for Karuna from the backend API that we have got the API link for. So I can decorate this function with the async keyword, and now right below my event bindings function, I will await, and I will define a function perform async call. So let us define this function. So I will say async, because we are going to make a HTTP request to our backend API to get the data. So we will decorate the function with async keyword perform async call, I will say const response await fetch, and we will use the base endpoint. So I will say base URL endpoint that we had defined right in the start, and then I can say const data await response.json, and then let us log the data to the console. So let us see what we get as an output. Okay, so you can see here we are getting the data from the backend. So we are getting the data for latest, confirmed, and deaths, which we will be using because they are getting updated by the API. We'll not be using recovered here, and we will be using the locations. So we will populate our object now that had the Karuna data that we made earlier, so with the latest and this locations. Now the locations, as you can see, it's an array of objects, and each object you can see represents a country, and we will be using the data that we're getting from the backend for rendering the map, as well as for when we select a location, we want to render the details for Karuna right down below this drop down list. Okay, so let us comment this out, and I will pull out latest and locations from the data that we are getting back. And then I will say Karuna data dot latest, and I will set that to latest, and then Karuna data dot locations dot push, and I will spread out the array of locations here. So whatever locations we are getting from the backend, I will use the spread operator, and then I will populate my data, so what we have as an object. So we'll set the locations here. And now right below the perform async call, let us log here Karuna data world details. So I will say Karuna data dot latest and console dot log Karuna prone locations Karuna data dot locations. Now let me show you one interesting thing that we can use, which is this endprogress.js. So I've already taken the script for this. So in the course files you can find the script for endprogress, which is right here. So endprogress.min.js, and in the style.css you can find the style for endprogress. So whatever styles the loader will take on, the spinner will take on. So we'll be having a spinner at the top right corner of our screen, and let us see how we can use endprogress while we are performing an async call to the server. Okay, so it's very easy. So what we need to do here is right below do event bindings, I will say endprogress dot start. So right here our async call will start, and once we are done with the async call, once we have got the data from the backend, we can close that, and let us take this function above the perform async call, and right below I will say endprogress dot done. So now let us see what we get here as the output. So I will reload the page, and you can see we are getting a loader here. Okay, and once the loader was done, we got the data from the backend API, which we are now logging to the console. But we are not utilizing the data inside our application. So let us see how we can do that. So now what I would like to do is I want to render the UI for the Karuna details pertaining to a specific country and the Karuna details pertaining to the entire world. For that we'll have to define a render UI function. But before that, let us complete the function render details for selected location, where we are currently logging hey to the console. Here inside the function render details for selected location, I will pass the event object, because this will appear when on the drop down a change event occurs. Okay, and this function will get triggered. We can log the event.target.value to the console. So console.log event.target.value, and let us go to the browser to see the log. So if I select a specific country, say Italy, and you can see Italy is getting logged to the console. So now what I want to do is let us comment this out, and I will say const country selected event.target.value, And now I want to find the Karuna details for the entire country. So basically whatever locations are covered inside a country, or whatever locations are there within a country for which we are having the Karuna details, like the number of deaths, the number of confirmed cases, I want to sum that up for the entire country. So if in the API, from the API, whatever data we are getting back, suppose for Italy we are given 7 locations, so we have to sum all the details for each and every location for Italy, and we have to show a cumulative total for the number of deaths and the number of confirmed cases for Italy and for every other country that is there in the data that you are getting from the backend. Okay, so for that we will make use of the reduce method. If you are not aware about the reduce method, the link for that video can be found down below. So I will say const location Karuna details, and I will say Karuna data dot locations. All the locations that we got from the backend API is stored under Karuna data dot locations array, and then we can apply the reduce method. So the first argument will be the accumulator, and the second will be the current location. And now if the current location, so whatever location you are having, for that the country matches the country that we have selected from the drop down, then what we need to do is we need to first set up an initial value for our accumulator. So I'll pass an object here, and you can see from IntelliSense it shows that the initial value, I will set country to an empty string, country code to an empty string, latest will be an object where I will set confirmed as 0, deaths as 0, and we will be updating these properties as we sum up for each and every country that is there in our data that we are getting from the backend API. So whatever location will fall within a country will accumulate the data for all the locations within a particular country, and we will update these properties for that country to get the cumulative count of the confirmed cases and the death cases. This entire thing will be our accumulator, and with each iteration this will get updated. Okay, so we can say accumulator, and we will set the country to current location dot country, and accumulator country code will be current location dot country underscore code, and then I will say accumulator. So this is the accumulator, the initial value, and you can access the latest key on that. So accumulator dot latest dot confirmed plus equal to, because we will be updating the value with each iteration for the confirmed cases. So we're gonna iterate, we're gonna sum up all the locations that are falling inside a country and get the confirmed cases pertaining to that country. So current location dot latest dot confirmed, accumulator dot latest dot deaths plus equal to, we'll again update this with each iteration. So current location dot latest dot deaths, and then we can simply return the accumulator right after the if check, return accumulator. So let us go down and log the location Karuna details that we are getting. So back in my browser, if I select a country, so now if I select a particular country, say Philippines, you can see we are getting an object for that. Open the object, you can see we're getting the country as Philippines, the country code, the latest, and the confirmed and deaths are coming from all the locations that are within Philippines. So we are cumulatively adding the confirmed and the number of death cases pertaining to Philippines, and that is how we are getting these counts. Okay, so this is how reduce method works in practice. So now what I need to do is I want to pass these details to the render UI function, and the render UI function is then supposed to render a table right below the drop down where it will specify the details, the confirmed and death cases pertaining to a country, and also the render UI function will also render the world details right above the map. So we will be defining the code for map later. So now let us define the render UI function. So let us comment this out, and we will define a function render UI, and there we will be passing on the location Karuna details that we are getting on applying the reduce method for a particular country that was selected from the drop-down. So let us define the render UI function. Inside the render UI function, this will receive details, so a details object and a boolean, which is the default argument, which is by default set to false. So if you don't pass anything to it, it is false. Otherwise, if you pass truth, this will get overwritten, and then we will be rendering the world cases. So if world is set to true, you will render the UI for the world Karuna details. But if the world is false, then you will be rendering the UI for a specific country that was selected from the drop down. So let us say HTML, set that to an empty string, and then I will say HTML, and let us write the table. So I will say thead, and inside the thead we'll check if the world boolean is set to true. So if it is set to true, I will simply write h1 and say world details. Otherwise, if world boolean is set to false, we can use a table row, and I will say details.country and details.country code. So for a specific country, we will be getting these two properties right here. So when you are passing location Karuna details, you will be having the value for country, you will be having the value for country code, and you will be having latest figures for confirmed and death cases, which will be passing this entire object that we get after the reduce method completely gets executed over the locations array that we got from the backend API. So we'll pass the complete object right inside here, and world property set to false, so this will render the UI for the country. Okay, we having the country property and country code property available on the details for the country that we will be receiving right here. Now right after the thead, let us define a t body, and I will say table row. Let us take two table rows for now. So I will say td, and inside the td I will check for the world boolean. If that is true, I will say details.confirmed. So this will render all the confirmed cases pertaining to the world. Otherwise, if it pertains to some country, then I will have that confirmed property on details.latest, and same is true for deaths as well. So I'll just copy this and change the confirmed property to deaths, and then what we need to do is right after the table, if the world boolean was true, then I will Karuna world details container dot inner HTML will set the HTML within the container, else Karuna details container that pertains to a country, and set the inner HTML to HTML. So let us go back to the browser to see the output for render UI. So if I select a country, Finland, you can see we are getting 3489 and 82. Okay, so I haven't defined the classes on our TDs. So this will have a class of cases, reported cases, and this will have a class of deaths, and the table will have the class of table. And these all classes have the style properties defined within the style.css file. So if we go back to the browser to see the output, so if we select a country now, you can see the country with its country code, the reported cases, and the number of deaths. Now let us render the world details right above where we will be rendering map later. So we will render the world details below this h1, which is coronavirus tracker. Perform async call, I will render the UI and pass on the Karuna Data dot latest and set the world boolean to true. And let us go back to the browser to see the output. You can see the world reported cases are getting outputted here, and the number of deaths pertaining to the entire world is getting printed here. And this works as well. So now to render the entire data on the map, what we can do is we can define a function, and I will name it as render map. And right above the initialize app function, I will define a function render map. And inside the function, let me show you what we need to do. So I'll go back to the API. So I am on Mapbox.gl docs. So in the example, you can see cluster. So this is what we will be using to render the points, as we have already seen in the demo for the project. Right here you can see Mapbox.gl dot access token. So your access token. So right above, I will paste this here, and I will paste my API token here. You can use your token and replace this string with that. Now inside the render map function, what we need to do is let us copy this code, the entire code in the script. So this map initialization, then listening for the load event, then adding layers. We'll replace the code with the data that we are having and copy the entire code till here. Okay, so the entire script that is there here, and paste it right here. So now let us replace the code. So first I would like to show you the data that we are working here. So what the example is working with. Okay, so the example is working with this GeoJSON data, but we will be preparing our GeoJSON from the JSON that we are getting from the backend, okay, to render the points on the map. Let us first analyze the data that is given in the example. Okay, so I will click on this and open this. So this is the GeoJSON data that is given to us in the example, and we will transform the data that we are getting from the API to look something like this. So we will be working with an array of features, and you can see we have the type as feature, properties, and then this geometry we will specify. The type will be point, then we coordinates, which is a latitude, longitude, and all such things. Okay, so we will be transforming this into the form that we require. So let us start making the changes. So right here I will change the var keyword to const. So this is the way we will initialize the map. We'll say new mapbox.gl.map, a container property style, center, and zoom. On listening to the load event, this callback function will get triggered. We have to add a source from our GeoJSON data, which we will be creating, and then set the cluster option to true, as you can see here. So GLJSON will add the point count property to your source data. So now we need to add the source. So let us replace the source that we had in the example to our source. So I will say places. The type will be GeoJSON, and let us delete this. And now we need to create an object. Okay, so we will replace the link from where we were getting the data for our example, and we will transform it to the GeoJSON that we require. So first I will say type as feature collection, and then we say CRS, and let us copy something from here, and let us replace our CRS with this. And now what we need to do is we need to set up an array of features, and for doing that I can say features Karuna Data dot locations dot map location, and here we will do the reverse geocoding to get the place name. And let us prepare the object or a feature or from a place. So I will say type as feature properties, and then I will set description, set that to a template string. And now let us create a table. Then I will say t head and t body. So I'm using emit, press tab, and inside the t head I will say tr. Here our place name will go, which we will render dynamically once we do the geocoding right here. Okay, so for now just statically I'm writing place name. Now inside the t body we need a table row, so tr, then we will say td, and here I will say confirmed cases. Here we will say td, and that we will get from the location that is there in our Karuna Data dot locations that we got from the backend API. So on the location we will have the latest field, and on that we will have confirmed. Let us copy this, and I will change this to dates, location.latest.dates, and let us copy this 2 more times. So I will change this to latitude, so this will be location.coordinates.latitude and location.coordinates.longitude. And then right after the table you can define an icon property, so I can set that to rocket, so as given in the example. Right after this properties object I can define geometry. So in the example you can see in the geometry we will have to define a point and then the coordinates, and which the coordinates are dynamically available. So the coordinates are available on the location object that you have in your locations array that you got from the API. So we'll use that dynamically and interpolate that. Okay, so let me show you how we can do this. So for the geometry I will set type as point, and coordinates is an array, so I will use template strings and I will say location.coordinates.longitude and location.coordinates.latitude. Now here we have the cluster set to true, so this is from the example. So max zoom is 14 and cluster radius is 50. And right down you can see that we are adding a layer, and the layer has an ID of clusters. The type is set to circle. Let us change the source to the one that we defined above to match that, and the filter will be has and point count. Then paint. For the paint we will define the color for the circle radius, and then you will add a layer for cluster count, where ID is cluster count, type is symbol, source is places, filter is has and point count, then the layout, and then we add a layer for the unclustered point, type is circle, source will be places, and then we have the filter and the paint, so circle color, circle radius, the stroke width, and all those color properties to paint the points on the map. And then we have the logic here that once you click on the clusters, so if you inspect a cluster on the click, then the callback function will get triggered. So let me name this as event, and then to grab the features I can say const features map.query rendered features event.point. So for the point that you are currently inspecting within the cluster, the layers is set to clusters, then const cluster ID, which you can get from the very first feature, properties.cluster ID, and then here set the source to places. Get the cluster expansion for the cluster ID, then the callback function will get triggered. Once you get the zoom value, the cluster expansion zoom value, and if you get an error you can return, so write on line 342, and then map.ease to change the center once you zoom in, so features 0 geometry coordinates and zoom. So now once you click on the map, so as you can see from the example, it says when a click event occurs on a feature in the unclustered point layer, this will open a pop-up at the location of feature with the description HTML, where we'll be rendering the data for the location. That is how many death cases are there for Karuna, how many confirmed cases are there, and latitude, longitude, and the name of place from reverse geocoding. Right here change this to event.features 0 const. Now from the properties I will destructure the description, so let me show you what the description was right above. So this is the description that we are grabbing here, okay, which is a table where we are rendering the place name, the confirmed cases, the deaths, and the latitude, longitude, and reverse geocoding for the place. So we are getting the description from the properties, okay, and change this to event. Now remove this tsunami variable, and even this is not required. Now as you can see from the comment given in the example, it says ensure that if the map is zoomed out such that multiple copies of the feature are visible, the pop-up appears over the copy being pointed to. So this means once you have the cluster, you zoom, you will see points, okay, and you will have multiple copies of that feature visible to you. And once you click on that particular point, you will see a pop-up that will appear, which will render the description. So here what we can do is that in this while loop, change this to event, and then you have to initialize the pop-up. So you will say mapbox.jl.popup, you will set the longitude, latitude to coordinates. You will set the, not this magnitude, but you will set the description, because this was for tsunami and we are working on the Karuna details that we're getting from the backend. And then we will add all these points to the map. Once your map is listening for the mouse enter event, so once the mouse enters on your map, okay, you have to change the cursor of your canvas in which the map is rendered to pointer. So once the mouse leaves your canvas, we have to change this cursor style to none, or you can say an empty string. Now let us see if it works or not. So I'll go back to my browser. Okay, so the map got rendered, and you can see the points are getting rendered on the map. If we click here, you can see we are getting the confirmed cases, the depths, the latitude. Okay, so I forgot to change here, so let us change that to longitude at here. So go back to the browser. Let us perform geocoding to see the exact place name once you click on a point. So now you can see we are getting the name of the place as a static thing, the place name, okay, but what is the place name? So we have to reverse geocode the latitude and longitude of the place to get the name of a place and then dynamically render here. Okay, so let us see how we can achieve that. So right here at this line, we will be using the geocoder. So let us first initialize our geocoder. So right above the render map function, I will go into the root scope of the file and say let geocoder, and right below the map I will say geocoder new mapbox geocoder, and I will pass the access token by accessing using mapbox.gl dot access token that we had earlier defined. Then I will add a control to the map, which is the geocoder that we are initializing right here. And then we need to add zoom and rotation controls to the map so we can zoom over the map. And for that we have to write one simple line, zoom and rotational controls for the map. So map dot add control and new mapbox gl dot navigation control. Let us see what we get on the map. So you can see we are getting the search field, and using the search field, if I type a country name, so say Brazil, press enter, and you can see we are directed to Brazil location. If I say United States, you can see we are directed to United States. So this works fine. Now one thing we need to do now is that if I click on the point, we need to render the place here. So we need to do reverse geocoding. So let us do that. Right here where we are mapping over the locations that we are getting from the API, I want to reverse geocode the latitude and longitude to get a place name so that I can dynamically interpolate the place name here like this. So let us define a constant place name here, and I will say await. So I will now decorate the callback function that we're getting in the map method with an async keyword, and I will say const place name await geocode reverse from lat long to place. So this will be a function that we will be defining in just a minute, and here we will be passing on the latitude and longitude of the location that we are currently on. So location dot coordinates dot longitude, and let us log the place name here. So now let us define the geocode reverse from lat long to place function. So I'll grab this out and go above right here. So function geocode reverse from lat long to place, and this will take on the latitude, or you can say lat and long, and this will be an async function. So I will be returning a promise from here. Okay, and then I can say return new promise. So we have already seen how we can create a promise in our video on promise. If you're not aware of how we can create a new promise and work with async code, the link for the video on promises can be found down below. Resolve and reject. So this is an arrow function that we're passing to our promise constructor. And here what I will do is I will say geocoder. So let me take this above. Geocoder dot mapbox client dot geocode reverse. So we are doing reverse geocoding, and we will pass an object here. Set the latitude to parse float. So we will be getting a string. So we'll convert that to a float, and longitude parse float lng. And the second parameter for this geocode reverse method will be a function that will receive the error if any and the response. And if we have an error, we can simply reject the error. Otherwise, we can resolve response dot features 0. If we do have a feature, then so we are using double and here. So if this is true, then the second thing will definitely get executed. 0 dot place name. Okay, so this is the entire implementation for the function geocode reverse from lat long to place. So this is the entire implementation for the function geocode reverse from lat long to place. So let us go back to the browser to see what we get. So you can see we are getting all the places getting logged to the console, but the map is not getting rendered here. So what is the problem here? Now the reason behind this is that we are using async here. Okay, it will definitely return us a location or a feature, but that will be wrapped inside a promise. So you will be getting an array of promises. Okay, so this will not be an array of features, it will be an array of promises, and each promise holds a feature. So each promise is wrapping a feature. So for tackling this, we can use a method that is defined on the promise API that we have discussed in the previous video, which was promise.all. So let us see how we can do this. Whatever I'm getting here as the value for features, I'll wrap this inside parenthesis, and I will say promise.all. And I will use the await keyword here. So I'll decorate this with await keyword and go right above, and I will decorate the function, the callback function for the load event with an async keyword as well. So now let us go to the browser to see the output. You can see all the places are getting logged to the console, and if I zoom on here and click on the point, you can see the latitude and longitude are getting reverse geocoded to a place name. So it says 783 Liask, Canada. Okay, so I click on this point, you can see it says yellowhead and confirmed cases, deaths, latitude and longitude. So this was all about the video on coronavirus tracker application. So if you liked the video, do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the very next video.